Hey there, James from Dimensional Insight. Today we're going to talk about the stamp template code block. Stamps, as you know, are those little reusable collections of text, graphs, and indicators that make it easy to build and expand your DivePort pages. Stamp templates are the building blocks that make all of this possible. There's a lot to cover, so let's get started.
In this video, you'll get an overview of the stamp template and an introduction to stamp syntax. We'll review the template code block as well as each attribute. Every stamp is based on the same basic template, which consists of the name, category, size, style, options, for self-service, constants, variants, and components tags. Size and components are required elements, and all stamps are coded within Workbench. The name tag specifies the name of the stamp. The name appears in DivePort when you're selecting a stamp to add to a dashboard. We recommend you choose a name that indicates what the stamp does or how it will be used. In addition, we recommend that the name match the stamp file name to make it easier to find the stamp file in Workbench. The category tag can be used to group stamps together in the Edit Stamp Portlet dialog box in DivePort. The category tag is optional, but we do recommend that you start with a category called Customized Stamps to keep track of any stamps that you might create. Make sure the category name you choose here matches the name of the Workbench folder that contains the stamp files in that category. The size tag defines the width and the height of the stamp in pixels. This is a required tag. The style tag specifies the CSS properties that will be applied to the stamp. We have a standard style, but you can use any CSS properties to create your own style. We've provided a link as a resource that you can use to create your own designs. The style we provide results in a basic white box like you've just seen on the dashboard. The options tag is the tag that ordinarily follows the style tag in a stamp file. But first, let's talk about the for self-service tag, and then we'll come back to options. The self-service tag indicates the stamp can be used on self-service pages. If this tag is present in a stamp, the stamp will be available within the self-service page in DivePort. If this tag is not present, the stamp will not be listed as an available option. One thing to note is that self-service stamps can have one measure only. They cannot have dimensions or any other options. So here again is our stamp file with the tag for self-service. This indicates that when we go to the self-service page on DivePort, we'll be able to add this stamp. So let's go to the DivePort and then to my self-service page. Let's search for total discharges. And now I see all of the stamps that I've made available. Here is my YTD chart. When I click on the stamp, it appears on the self-service page. If the self-service tag were not present in the Workbench file, we would not have been able to add the stamp here in DivePort. The options tag determines how many measures and/or dimensions DivePort administrators can specify for a stamp when they configure the stamp in DivePort. Note that if you're making a stamp for self-service, you'll want to use one measure only. There are several different choices for options. If no option is specified, the Edit Stamp Portlet dialog box will simply ask you for one measure and no dimensions. If you specify dimension, the Edit Stamp Portlet dialog box will ask you to select a dimension. Multi-dimension will prompt you to select multiple dimensions, and multi-value will prompt you to select multiple measures. Use the No Value flag when you don't want to add any measure or dimension. This flag is mainly used to expose factory macro information, such as when the factory was last refreshed, or the 12-month summary, or a year-to-date summary. Measure categories will display the measure categories in matrix portlets, and num measures indicates the specific number of measures you want the DivePort administrator to pick. Multi-value will allow you to select any number of measures, but if you want to specify a specific number, you can use num measures. Our best practice for stamps that use self-service is to use num measures 1. Let me demonstrate that. Here's a page that has 4 different stamps that use different options. This is our classic self-service stamp that we were using earlier, and its options are set to num measures 1. So we can see here that the dialog box prompts us to select one measure and one measure only. This is our executive stamp, and this uses the multi-value option. So here we can select as many measures as we want. There is no limit to the number of measures that can be added to a stamp that uses the multi-value option. Here we have a stamp that allows us to look at a measure by a dimension. So the options we set here are going to be num measures 1 and dimension. So we can see in the edit dialog box, it asks us for a dimension and it asks us for a measure. And then finally, we have our no value option. And this is where we can pull information. It is generally going to use system-based macros, but it is not going to ask you for any additional information. The constants tag defines stamp variables that can be used throughout the stamp template to ensure the consistency of various elements, for example, formatting options such as colors. In our example, we have a stamp variable that links the color threshold green to the hex value 2BB32E. If you reference that stamp variable in multiple sections of the stamp file, and then, at a later date, change the hex value assigned to threshold green in the constants section, all the references to threshold green update automatically. You can use stamp macros throughout the stamp file to reference the stamp variables you set in the constants section. For example, this macro references the blue stamp variable in the constants section. To learn about the variance tag, we'll look at a new stamp file called YTD chart with variance. This file is identical to the file we've been looking at up until this point, except for the addition of the variance tag. The variance tag allows you to vary specific aspects of a stamp template without creating a separate stamp template file. For example, you might want to create a stamp variant to vary the color of a stamp or change the chart type used in a stamp. In this new stamp file, we have 2 variants. Variant green bar changes the chart type to spark column and the chart color to green. Variant blue line changes the chart type to spark line and the chart color to blue. The variant name, for example green bar, is a required element. The name appears in the variants pull-down in the Edit Stamp Portlet dialog box when a DivePort administrator configures a stamp portlet for a stamp that includes one or more variants. If self-service is enabled for the stamp, the variant name also appears above the image of the stamp in the gallery of stamps the end user sees when adding a stamp to a self-service page. The components tag is really the meat and potatoes of the stamp, because this is where you specify all of the portlets that will be in the stamp. Each component type has its own functionality, options, and limitations. The component types you can use in stamps include analysis, chart, HTML, indicator, image, matrix, measures, quick view, and text. This is a required tag. So to review, here's our stamp template code block again. We have our name and our category, and then we specify our size and set our style, which results in our white box. Because we'll use this stamp for self-service, we've set options to num measures 1. Following the Options tag, we've added the For Self-Service tag. If you don't want to use the stamp for self-service, you would simply not add that tag. Our Constants tag specifies the formatting settings we want to use throughout the stamp, and our Variants tag enables variants for the stamp. And then finally, we have the Components section, which specifies all the portlets that will be in the stamp. So while each stamp will differ when it comes to components and attributes, every stamp starts with the same basic template. Only size and components are required for the stamp to work.
Well, that's it for the stamp template code block. If you found this video informative, click on the like button and subscribe for more videos just like it. If you have any questions or insights, feel free to drop them in the comments section below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.